Welcome to another Modern Mind Ancient Book, where we are going back to move forward. We're finding a love for the law, the prophets, and the writings. If you'd like to contact us, feel free to send us an email at modernmindancientbook@gmail.com. My name is Roger. I'm your host. Today we have Pete, co-host, and Nick J, creative director. Thank you for joining us, fellas.
Good to be back.
Good to be back. Been a while.
I just noticed you shaved.
Yeah. Got down kind of slow there.
All right.
Looking extra handsome tonight.
Yeah.
We're doing the prophet Ezekiel.
Zeke.
Old Zeke. That's right. His name means God will strengthen. The author identifies himself as Ezekiel, the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Kabar.
So he was already in exile at this point.
Yes, but it's not the exile that most know.
Right.
So Judah had not yet fallen, but the good king, Josiah, had fallen.
Right.
He was killed during a battle supporting Pharaoh Necho.
Right.
And the Babylonians had briefly sieged Judah, but Nebuchadnezzar,
right,
the father of Nebuchadnezzar, he died.
Right.
And so Nebuchadnezzar had to go. He had to go back and solidify his power in Babylon. So they were saved for a moment more. But when he left, he took important people of the city. He took captives. Right. He took them back to Babylon. And it just happened to be that Ezekiel was one of them. And he was placed in an environment that was not his own.
Right.
And he was being taught a different language. And he was being subservient to the Babylonians.
Right.
Which even the Assyrians had not done to Israel.
Right.
They were allowed to be vassal states that paid tribute and they stayed where they were. And everything was fine until there was a little bit too much surety in their strength. And they went up against Babylon, and Nebuchadnezzar was not one to let that go. So he was of the priestly caste. He was an official in the king's court of Israel. At this point in history, they had a lot of problems in front of them, and they had a lot of problems behind them. Not only in rulership, but lots of just fear. And Ezekiel is also one of these books that we build a lot of doctrine on.
Yes.
Yeah. Ezekiel is very eschatological. Pete, what does that mean?
Study of the end times. Ezekiel has a lot of dual prophecy for his time and for end times as well.
That's right. To the religious person, they might say, well, Ezekiel was spared and he was brought there because, God loved him, right? So he wasn't going to be he wasn't going to be there when Nebuchadnezzar showed back up.
Right.
Because when he did, it was not good. His prophecies are chronologically recorded. That's kind of a rare thing.
Right.
In these books. He prophesied for 22 years. In 587 BC, his wife died. And that was a prophetic thing. He wrote about it.
Right.
In 586 BC, the city was utterly taken. His prophecies are arranged sequentially from the 5th year of the exile. So he started writing while he was in Babylon. To the 25th year of the exile. Chapter 29 is an exception since it's grouped thematically with the prophecies against Egypt. So this tells us a lot about these books. These books, they're designed, organized, and implemented to tell a story,
right,
from a certain type of worldview.
Which is probably more in line with the way that the other ones were compiled.
Right.
Exactly.
Thematically.
Right.
Yeah, thematically. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So, this just gives you some indicators on how you can kind of imagine these books to exist. Because to, the modern mind, we like to see things in step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So he received his first recorded revelation in the 4th month of the 5th day of the 5th year of the exile of King Jehoiachin. And Jehoiachin came to the throne in 597 BC. So he only reigned for 3 months before it was captured by the Babylonians. And everybody was deported to Babylon. Well, a few people were left, not many. He took anybody of worth, anybody of intelligence, anybody that could potentially spring forth another rebellion,
Right.
but also to indoctrinate these people into Babylon. For Nebuchadnezzar, he was called by the one true God on behalf of his people, on behalf of the world, to order the world,
Right.
to create the empire that the gods needed and wanted. He was commissioned to do this thing. And so he was bringing back all the people to internment camps and re-education camps, where they would begin to see the glory of Babylon. Kind of like the communism we had.
I was just thinking, you can't call Nebuchadnezzar Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
Or you get banned from TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was an interesting guy. Babylonian theology was not at all similar, but the ancient Near Eastern worldview definitely had a chaos to order idea present in it. And the Babylonians, consider this, the Babylonians considered themselves, their land, the place that Eden originally existed.
Right.
It was between the rivers. And they considered themselves chosen people. And they tried to organize numerous times. And only at this point in history did they start to see victory. And they saw victory over the Assyrian Empire.
Mm-hmm.
They destroyed a 1,000-year reign.
So compared to that, the Babylonians were a delight.
Right.
Well, see, that's
Yeah.
that's the point, right? That's the interesting thing about it. So, was Nebuchadnezzar a horrible person? In his time,
He was used by Yahweh to preserve the Jewish population.
well, that's right. They valued their books precisely because they were taken into captivity. And so they had to maintain their history. They had to maintain their nationhood,
Their identity.
But you couldn't have it in exile.
Right.
So how do you keep it? Well, you keep really good records. This book is a challenge because the first recipients were people who were taken from where they lived to a place that wasn't where they wanted to be. But Nebuchadnezzar was fair. He placed them by a river. He gave them a way of life.
Right.
In this, being a priest, a priest of the way of the Lord, right?
Right.
He's warning the people that the destruction of Jerusalem is coming.
Right.
But I guarantee you, most of the prophets in Jerusalem were not. And it was going to be at the hands of Nebuchadnezzar. So there was some correspondence between the people in Babylon and Jerusalem. And Ezekiel did tell them. They didn't listen. After the destruction of Jerusalem, the people began to respond to his messages. The first reason is that his prophecy was validated and fulfilled. And the second reason is that the prophecies focused on the restoration of the kingdom to a greater glory, which it would have been a welcome message, which is that eschatological or end times thing.
I just think it's funny, when he was the bearer of bad news, nobody wanted to hear it. There's normalcy bias. There's, could it really be that bad? Then people jump on the bandwagon when it starts to be proven true. It's like, oh yeah, he was cool all along. In fact, he's giving us good news, so we should probably listen to that.
Right.
It's just funny because I know we're trying to take this from the ancient perspective, but you could see modern people doing the exact same thing.
Oh yeah.
All of it teaches us, leads us, brings us, helps us to understand. It helps us to understand who we are, and it helps us to understand that our image, vision, and desire for God does not fit into the temporal mind of man.
Right.
Nobody in Judah thought that they would be conquered. And so we have these experiences, And we're so convinced until it's over, right? Everything we dream, thought, and imagine is not true. And that has been true of the nation of Israel under the covenant with Moses repeatedly. And it points us in a direction. It teaches us through the ages what is and is not true about people doesn't reflect on God. So after Babylon, the Persians come, they conquer the Babylonians, and instead of just devouring the Jewish people, he sends them back.
Yeah.
They never should have had that opportunity either. And then they build this temple. Then that temple gets utterly burned by Rome, destroyed. The people exiled. Many, many people lost their lives. And they disappear for, what, 1,800 years?
1,800 years.
Not in the land at all. They should have. Sephardic Jews are from Spain, right? There's a bunch of European Jews, Ethiopian Jews, Moroccan Jews, Jews from the United States, Jews in the Dominican Republic.
Yes,
right?
Asian
Jews, all over the place. But now they're back in the land again, and talking about building another temple.
Yep.
That's the thing about these books. So we go back, and then we look forward. And when we're going back, we can see that Ezekiel's not all that outdated, right?
Right.
I mean, it's who people are. The Judeans thought that they were always going to have their kingdom, and then suddenly, boom, it's gone, right?
Yes.
And they went into exile, and it was a tragedy, and Syria just fell, didn't it?
Right.
And it had been through many, many years of problems, along with Egypt and all these places, all these tragedies. They happen over and over again. People experience them. Israel has been through it like 5 times now. And so it's not uncommon. We don't do well with being faithful to God. And that's exactly who the Judeans were. And it's that simple premise that really this podcast is about.
Right.
It's about going back to move forward. It's about finding who we really are, and then how we can mitigate that by using the instructions of the Torah and the prophets and the writings to have a more healthy and centered religious perspective that is at the core of who we are. Meaning, by whose name are you called?
Right.
So, is it Judea? Do you take pride in your city? Do we take pride in being Americans? Do we take pride in being Christians as we imagine it? Because last time I checked, most of our theology is based on the 1700s, which is a long way removed from Jesus.
Right.
How right are we? How wrong are we? That might be the better question. And so that's why we do this, so that we can mine these documents for what they are. So you want to read Ezekiel as somebody who has been deported or pulled out from your land, and you're in a foreign land. You're being forced to learn a language and a culture and a religion that are not yours.
Right.
And they're repressive to you. You wonder why God has judged you and brought you into exile. So you need to know. That's why he's writing this book. You know your nation has violated the covenant and is under judgment of God, but it's still hard to accept in very difficult circumstances. You want to read this so that you'll know what's going to happen to you, to your city, to your nation in the future. You desire to understand how God will avenge what's happened to you, and how God will uphold the covenant that he made to your fathers. You hope to read and gain hope. You need the instruction because you believe and you know that God will restore Israel. He will restore his people and his nation and his temple and the kingdom. But first, you must be purified. What's the argument, Nick?
The argument is that Yahweh will judge Judah and the nations and establish his kingdom with his messianic shepherd in New Jerusalem.
All sorts of eschatology.
Yes, there's a ton in there. I just wanted to say before, too, because I missed it, that I really liked the summary that you gave of why we do this.
Right.
And it should be very humbling, because the short version of what I got from you is You find out who you are, and then you have to mitigate it by finding out who you should be.
That's right.
Yeah. Bring those two together at some point.
It takes a lifetime.
It does.
It takes a lifetime. We have a warped sense of things. We tend to see justice as what we imagine it to be.
Right.
The Judeans saw justice as destroying the Babylonians.
Right.
Yeah.
But they didn't get that, did
Right.
they?
No?
Instead, they got Nebuchadnezzar, who was very capable.
Right.
He overthrew the Assyrians, and God had a judgment for the Assyrians.
Right.
And God had a judgment for Israel. And God had a judgment coming for Nebuchadnezzar. And God had a judgment coming for Cyrus. You know, I mean, it just keeps on going. And so, people, to you Christians out there, it is very important to internalize what Nick really just pointed out. First, we have to find out who we are. That's why we go back. We go back and we study the lineage from where we came. The God who acted in history is available to us. He's in these books. We can learn about him and his character, but most importantly, first, we can learn about the people, and then we can consider how similar we may be to those people.
Right.
Then we take that information and we mitigate ourselves by figuring out who God expects and desires us to be, and then try to fight that battle. And that is a battle. What's the key verse, Pete?
The key verse is Ezekiel 39, 28 and 29. Then they will know that I am the Lord, their God, because I made them go into exile among the nations, and then gathered them again to their own land. And I will leave none of them there any longer, and I will not hide my face from them any longer. For I shall have poured out my spirit on the house of Israel, declares the Holy God.
That sounds nice.
It does, and it really jumped out to me just in the beginning part of that. They will know that I am the Lord their God because I made them go into exile.
Ah!
You know, how many people, well, that can't be God.
Right.
These things that are happening to us.
Yeah.
He would never, because he's loving, and because, you know, we're trying so hard.
Right.
No, they'll know I'm God because I made them go into exile.
Right.
Do we see God for who he is, or do we see what we want him to be?
Right.
That it ties into that statement I made a few moments ago about our theology really being based in the 17th or 18th century, and not seeing that faith without works is dead.
Right.
Not seeing that by whose name you are known is the outcome of your life. We have to look and do and be a part of God's covenant
Right.
world. We got to go back to move forward. We got to figure it out.
Right? Because you can't do that unless you have some inkling of who he is and what he wants.
Right.
That's right. The God of what we call the Old Testament is the same exact
Right.
God that Jesus represented
Right.
to us. We just tend to divorce the idea of his being the Davidic conquering king from the Old Testament, and we tend to make it only when he comes back. But he's got this funny statement where he says, "Depart from me, I never knew you, you
Right.
workers of iniquity." Speaking of people who did works in his name. And how could that be if he's all loving and all it is just saying his name? It's a challenge. So the purpose of this book is to rebuke the exiles in Babylonia of their arrogant rebellion by warning them of the destruction of Jerusalem.
Right.
The book of Ezekiel is a dense book. It's a little bit of a challenge to read. It takes some study. It's a great prophetic and future-looking thing. So take, for instance, the key verse here. I will take them out and bring them to their own land, and I will leave none of them there any longer. But that's exactly what's happening today,
Yeah.
right? So did it happen for Babylon? It sure did.
Right.
They went back to Israel, and it's happening again today. Jewish people, by and large, are finding great patriotism. They are beginning to come back to faith, and they are going back to Israel, because when the Iranians launched, I think it was 184 ballistic missiles,
And
none of them landed. One, I think it killed a Palestinian or something.
Yeah.
It wasn't even the target, right? Yeah, well, and how about the before and after of the last part? And I will not hide my face from them any longer.
No. No. And that's what we want. There's an ancient priestly blessing. It says, and this is for you, this is for us in this room. May the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you and give you peace. Thank you for listening. We've enjoyed our time. Thank you, boys, for being here.
Thank you.
Good to be back.
Good to be back.